So should I just dig through with my eyes closed blindly like I was really Daredevil? Hey y'all, welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures, and home of the mystery box. And today we are digging deep into a Daredevil mystery box. We got like a ton of Daredevil and Daredevil adjacent figures. I'm super excited for the premiere of Daredevil Born Again, so that's certainly playing a role in all of this. But I want to get into these and look at kind of the history of Daredevil. I've actually been reading Daredevil straight for the last 25 years. I don't know that I've missed an issue since like the relaunch with Kevin Smith in 2000. I'm going to get some things wrong, but I have a deep love for the character, and hopefully that comes out in this video. And before we get into some of the great ones in this box, I really have to point out this figure that I recently got, and it's the one that I have in my display down in my secret lounge. This is the brand new Mafex Daredevil, and it's part of kind of their classic 60s series. You know, we've gotten Captain America, Thor, we've gotten Spider-Man, obviously plenty of Spider-Man, but this Daredevil is the one where I really think Mafex's look and size and articulation finally comes together to give us the kind of figure that we really want. This Billy Club with the wire is bendable, and I've got it in a shape that I really love because I have him kind of up on my shelf with the Billy Club sort of flying at you. It just, for me, this has been like a perfect Daredevil figure. I love the look of Red Daredevil, so we had to start with that one because it is just such a great figure. Now, as we dig in here, there's another one that I really kind of wanted to mention right off of the bat, and it's the cel-shaded Daredevil. Now, I have not been a big fan of the cel-shaded figures. The VHS figures from the X-Men line were fine, and the VHS 2-packs that we've gotten for the Spider-Man animated show have actually been pretty good because they haven't gone too heavy into the cel shading, but this is one of the very few instances where I think the cel shading actually works. And what this reminds me of is the book, the story that the new Disney Plus Daredevil series is based on, Born Again. So Born Again was like a 6-issue series written within the main Daredevil title, and it was written by Daredevil writer extraordinaire Frank Miller. He had returned to the title after his incredible heyday that we'll talk about later on, and he teamed up with the current artist on the book, David Mazzucchelli. Now, Mazzucchelli, some of you may know from his team with Frank Miller on Batman Year One, and that is truly one of comics' finest moments. But their work together on Born Again was equally good, and Mazzucchelli has almost a cartoony, almost a simplistic style, but there's actually so much detail in there, and he uses a really heavy inking line, and I think that that comes out. I think you can see that in this figure. I think this figure really represents kind of that heavy inking style of David Mazzucchelli. Now, it's interesting, they didn't give us new parts at the boots and at the gloves, and there's actually, you know, panels where that matches the artwork. So I'm not too mad about this, but I have to admit, this is probably my favorite out of all the cel-shaded figures because I think it does actually represent a very specific look for Daredevil, and it totally works. So, super good. Now, you can't have Daredevil without having some of his greatest foes, and no foe was more potent than Bullseye. This is the Bullseye from the 3-pack. It still has pins. It's basically a redo of the previous Marvel Legends Bullseye. That, I believe, is a new head with that kind of maniacal smile. And apparently this blue on the chest actually did appear in the comics. I don't remember when that was. Maybe it was some limited series or something. He came with a ton of accessories and was cool, but, you know, it was part of a 3-pack, so not everybody could get that. And that was a shame because in that 3-pack was this absolute goddess of a figure of Elektra. So we got Elektra in her white outfit. It's pretty much her classic look, you know, with the sash, with the open shoulders, with the armbands and kind of the straps down her leg. But this head sculpt is truly spectacular. I think this is maybe the best female head sculpt that Marvel Legends has ever done. A lot of it has to do with how intricate and how spectacular this hair is, with her bandana kind of flowing through it and just all of the body and life of that. Now, we got a second head sculpt. We actually got her more traditional Elektra look, and this one also is just perfect. The inkjet technology that's really bringing out these faces is so good, and her hair is terrific as well. It's just nowhere near as exciting as this. Now, this figure has been out a couple of years now, and I'm really shocked that we haven't gotten this figure in the classic Elektra red. Hopefully, that's something that'll happen. I'm always pitching a Marvel Hall of Fame line, so that everybody can get a hold of these figures. I would love to see this Elektra repainted in red. And in that Hall of Fame line, she really needs to come with, here it is, the Daredevil from that 3-pack. So this is maybe the best Marvel Legends Daredevil that we've gotten. I believe this is on the Spider-Man Renew Your Vows body, and it totally works for that. I've never loved the Renew Your Vows for Spidey. I always thought it was maybe a little bit too beefy, a little bit too muscular, maybe a little too squat. But it actually works for Daredevil. I think it's a better body on Daredevil than it is on Spider-Man. So this one is, fully pinless, all the articulation, good butterflies, which you really need. He came with some great accessories where you can get sort of that swooping look to his billy club. This figure needs to be more accessible. This figure needs to be out there in a single carded format where collectors can get it, because having it tied into like a $75 3-pack just seems cruel. So I'd love to see this. I mentioned this as a possibility in an upcoming, if we get a second wave of Secret Wars figures, I'd love to see this figure re-released in that, so that, it got more of a mass release for everybody to get a hold of. That's what I want. I want more people to get a hold of that figure. Daredevil's another group of Daredevil enemies slash frenemies slash, depending on, what time you're reading the book, but traditionally the Hand are, and there's kind of the hand symbol there. This is a Hand ninja with a skull head. He did come with an alternate head. This is one of the newer Hand ninjas that we've gotten. I think this was from the run where Daredevil and Elektra had actually taken over the Hand and were in control of it and trying to use it as a force of good. But let's look and see some more. I've got an entire bag of Hand ninjas sitting here. Several of these are going to be the same. I think these I believe came in like some early Hasbro Marvel Legends 2-packs. I think we got like a Daredevil 2-pack maybe. And because it was something that had like different costumes or like a maskless Daredevil or something, I was able to army build these. They're, they're pretty simple ninja guys. If I ever get around to doing a replication of G.I. Joe issue 21, the silent interlude issue, I'm actually going to use these guys for the generic ninjas that are in that. This one, I think this is a different one. Yeah, this is the newer Hand ninja. He's got better weapons, better articulation, better sculpting. And this was the guy that came in the Stiltman Build-A-Figure wave, and Hasbro did us an absolute solid by placing the elongated Stiltman legs in with this guy. So if you wanted to army build him, you weren't left with a bunch of leftover Build-A-Figure parts. No, you could use it to make your Stiltman 40 feet tall if you wanted to. So it was a simple thing from the marketing team, but they absolutely crushed it by having the Hand ninja be a army builder with basically an army building Build-A-Figure part. Super, super cool. I don't remember where these black Hand ninjas came from. You can see they're basically the exact same sculpt as the one that we just saw. They're almost like zombie Hand ninjas. But again, we've had, so many different versions of these. Fun fact, much of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore was derived from Daredevil. In fact, their origins actually cross over. The ooze that spilled out onto the street that blinded Matt Murdock also seeped down into the sewers, mutating 4 baby turtles and Master Splinter. So there's a complete connection between the origins of Daredevil and the origins of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And for that reason, the Turtles' main enemies are the Foot Clan, which obviously is a takeoff on the Hand from Daredevil. But let's look at some more DD figures. Let's go through some of kind of the history of Daredevil figures. This is one that I've actually always liked. This is a super early Hasbro figure. It's still got kind of Toy Biz hips, but there's something about the lean, athletic, kind of gymnast look of this Daredevil that I've always really enjoyed. I thought it was good. I like that the DD is actually sculpted on his chest. It really stands out well. He's got a little bit of a pinhead on this body, but this is one that I've always been really fond of, even though it came from like kind of the early dark days of Hasbro Marvel Legends. Still good figure, and it is the basis for this figure. So there was a first appearance variant. See, you can still see it has the DD on there. So Daredevil's very first comics were who was drawing those? Was like Larry Lieber drawing them potentially? I think so. Maybe Stan Lee's brother might have been the artist on some of those early ones. But they brought in the title wasn't doing great, and so they brought in veteran comic artist and overall rapscallion Wally Wood. Wally Wood is one of the greatest illustrators in the history of comics. His sci-fi work and his work with EC Comics in the 50s and 60s is just, it's beyond comparison. And the work that he was turning in at Marvel wasn't quite like that. It was obviously done on much more of a deadline, but he came in and took over the Daredevil book. This is a more accurate looking first appearance Daredevil with the single solitary D on the front. This really, I think, better represents DD's original look. But for issue, was it 4 or issue 7? One of those early issues, Wally Wood just turned in the pages with a brand new costume. Didn't say anything to the writers, didn't say anything to the editors. It was the Marvel method. The artist basically did all the work. They turned in a completed story, and the scripters threw in the dialogue bubbles. And Wally Wood said, yeah, nope, I'm just going to convert Daredevil's costume, and came up with this. And this beauty has basically been the Daredevil costume ever since. Now, this one is the one, I want to say this was maybe in the Hobgoblin Build-A-Figure wave, potentially, or maybe the SPDR Build-A-Figure wave, but this, until the 3-pack, was really our best Marvel Legends Daredevil. It's a solid figure. Kind of a good flat DD face, but, decent crunchy articulation. You can get him. Daredevil's not quite as bendy as Spider-Man, but I do tend to think of him in that same kind of gymnast sort of leaping across the tops of buildings sort of look. I think that's why that Mafex Daredevil is so good, because it really bends so well. But sadly, this figure has now been outdone by some of its later issues. Now, while we're looking at Daredevil, let's go all the way back to the very first Daredevil figure, the one that came in the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars line from Mattel in Wave 2 all the way back in 1984. So, my DD's got a little bit of paint rub on his nose. I hope that didn't happen, here in the box. He's typically down on the shelf, and if you picked up any of the recent Secret Wars figures, you know that they came with the lenticular shield. Well, here's the example of Daredevil. You can see he's got Spidey in the background of his. I believe I have his other different discs inside there. Simple, 5 POA. I always thought that this body really worked well for Daredevil. Even though Daredevil did not appear in the Secret Wars comic, he was such a popular character at the time with Frank Miller writing him that he did end up in the line. Super, super cool. This would be a 1970s Mego Daredevil had he been made in the 70s. This is actually one of the recreations when Mego has gone through some of their rebranding, and they actually came out with a few Marvel figures, and this Daredevil is definitely one of the finest ones of them. Love that head sculpt. I think that is such a really strong classic head sculpt, and he's on the 8-inch cloth costume body. This one came with a ton of accessories. You can see you've got like a blind Matt Murdock head. He has his glasses in there. He's got his suit to do some lawyering, and you even can dress him up as a first costume Daredevil. So a really nice piece from the reconstituted Mego Corporation. You know, we're starting to get new Megos through the Disney stores, and you know, there's rumors that we're going to get a total of 20 figures in that line. Would love to see this Daredevil come back so that more people could get a hold of it. Oh yeah, here is another early Daredevil. This is the Daredevil from Wave 2 of the Spider-Man Classics line back in 2001, the precursor of Marvel Legends. And this was when Toy Biz first really experimented with hyper-articulated 6-inch figures, and everything else, it really comes from this Spider-Man Classics line. So in Wave 2, they utilized the base Spider-Man body. Again, I think that works. There's a ton of similarities between Spidey's physique and Daredevil's physique, but they gave him a new head sculpt. And I actually did a video on this Spider-Man Classics line, and in that video, I got the chance to speak with the sculptor of this figure, Steve Kewis, and he confirmed to me that this head sculpt is meant to represent the artwork of Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti from their run when they rebooted the Daredevil title with Kevin Smith as the writer. So just kind of a cool fact. I always thought that it was. I always thought this was a Quesada head, but to actually hear it from the sculptor, nice. Very, very cool. One of the cool things about doing this channel is, you know, getting to talk to the people who behind the scenes actually created these things. Super, super cool. I was about to grab another bullseye. Why don't I just grab another bullseye? So before the 6-inch lines, Toy Biz made a ton of 5-inch figures. And this bullseye actually, I believe, was a Toy Fair exclusive figure. I don't think that he was released in the main line. I think he was a magazine exclusive. Really, really nice. But he's not the only person to carry on the name of Bullseye. This is Lady Bullseye. Now, this is a reasonably new figure from Hasbro, and we're lucky for it because look at how good that paint detail, that head sculpt with her hair up in a bun, just how fantastic this figure looked. Lady Bullseye was like, I think she was like, you know, one of the choices for like one of Toy Biz's final Marvel Legends figures. I'm really glad that they waited and we didn't end up with those weird Toy Biz hips. Instead, we got a really perfect figure. She came with a ton of accessories, including these like deadly fans and her swords. Just a really choice figure of a pretty cool and pretty unique looking Daredevil villain. Okay, back to the 5-inch line. Here is Elektra. I think Elektra was like a comic shop exclusive, like a Diamond exclusive figure. She's got a little bit of soft goods, both here with her her cap and then her sash, but then she has the classic Elektra stylings. You know, it's a repaint of probably like a Jean Grey X-Men character, but I think she looks really awesome. That's a great, great figure. She's on display down with my 5-inch figures in my secret lounge. Let's change gears again and go to 7 inches. So this is a Diamond Select. So this is a 7-inch figure. Good sculpting. We do get the unmasked Matt Murdock facial sculpt, the kind of blind guy there. Pretty good, very, very limited articulation. You would think that these are ball shoulders, but they're not. This was relatively early in Diamond Select's time. I do have, that's right here. I have the other one. I have the masked version as well. It's a good looking figure if you're just looking for basically like a plastic statue to set on your shelves, but because it doesn't really scale with the rest of my Marvel Legends figures, it's kind of been stuck in this box for some time. I see 2 big guys. Let's pull the big guys out. So Kingpin was a Spider-Man villain, and when Frank Miller took over the writing duties on Daredevil with issue 168, actually the very first character that he introduced in his opening issue was Elektra, and this is an early Hasbro Elektra. This is the one that came with those hand figures, I believe. She was in a 2-pack with the different hand figures. You can tell that it's an early Hasbro because the paint detail is really, really flat. But right before Toy Biz lost the license in 2007, they produced a face-off 2-pack that included this Kingpin figure. I love it. Frank Miller, when he took over Daredevil, one of the things he said is, we're going to steal as many Spider-Man villains as we can. And so the Kingpin really went from being a Spidey villain. His first appearance was in, is it issue 49 of Amazing Spider-Man, drawn by John Romita Sr.? He has now really become much more associated with Daredevil than he ever was with Spider-Man. He's still a Spidey villain, but I think he definitely is much more of a Daredevil villain. And like I said, I just recently went back and reread the Born Again storyline, and that is directly a Kingpin versus Daredevil story. Not to spoil anything, but the first issue of that storyline is one of the most perfect 22-page comics you'll ever read. In that, you have a betrayal, and that betrayal leads to the Kingpin systematically destroying Daredevil's life over the next 22 pages. It is so brilliantly done, brilliantly written, and brilliantly drawn. It's just one of my absolute favorite comics. And this big, giant, hulking, build-a-figure white suit Kingpin, this is my Kingpin to fight Daredevil. Really, really good. I know a lot of you guys might have seen in the upcoming Gamerverse line, we're getting like a black suited Kingpin. I think that one's going to work with this collection as well. But in the meantime, we got this big boy to hang on to. Talking about those face-off figures that went with that, it's bad enough being blind, but to have to fight crime with only one arm is really bad. So this is the maskless version, of Daredevil. He's got his mask. Oh, look how cool that is with the mask right there kind of flopping over. Crazy shoulders. I mean, just, Toy Biz crazy shoulders. Still has finger articulation, but a really good Matt Murdock head sculpt. Luckily I have two of these. So here's one that actually has two arms. So kind of cool. Insane hips, weird musculature, crazy ankle joints, but still something so cool about this now almost 20-year-old figure. So let's see. Here it is. So here is the masked version. This is still a good figure. There's something about kind of the paint wash and the overlay that Toy Biz would do. Just so much more kind of life to some of their paint work than some of the early Hasbros. Again, those are cuckoo cachoo shoulders. Like, I've studied anatomy. That does not exist. That is just utterly insane, but still really, really awesome. Love it. This is one that we've seen. This is that same SPDR Build-A-Figure wave. Really good looking figure. Let's talk about this one. So Spider-Man Classics were really just those first two waves, but then the line kind of carried on with a bunch of repaints and a bunch of people who were just kind of Spidey adjacent, and this sort of dark shaded Daredevil with much more of the heavy inking lines across his face appeared in that series. Again, you've got some really wacky shoulders and hips and some fairly goofy proportions. I also think this is a little bit muted. I do kind of prefer the brighter red for my Daredevil, but I don't know. It's pretty cool. Here's another Bullseye. Oh, that's old. Maybe that's the Toy Fair exclusive one, because that really looks almost like a cheap knockoff. Oh, it's clearly a Punisher figure. That's obviously, a Punisher belt there that they've just repainted. This may be the repaint that was a Toy Fair exclusive. I told you there were a bunch of hand ninjas in here. Look, here's like a white version. Again, this is one that came in those early Hasbro 2-packs with Elektra. Now, Elektra has had her share of wonky figures, and we're going to pull out a few. This is the first Diamond Select Elektra, and it was maybe one of the very first Diamond Select figures, like easily in the top, like first 2 or 3 figures. It was like Ultimate Spider-Man, Punisher, and then maybe Elektra. No articulation from the waist down. She's sculpted in this wide stance. I think that you could pop her waist off. That's a bad idea on a 20-year-old figure, and put like some standing legs. I kind of like the facial sculpt. I kind of like the costume. The hair is interesting. Not as good as that newer one, but kind of interesting. But that's a Diamond Select. She also appeared relatively early in the Marvel Legends line, and this is where you had to really wonder if anybody at Marvel Legends had ever actually seen a naked woman before, because look at these arms and shoulders. she's got that terrible neck joint that like exposes her Adam's apple. These hips are not how hips work. I'm not even sure. Oh, that's where the thing's supposed to be stuck down. Really, look at the ankles, like the crazy ankle articulation. We give the early Marvel Legends Scarlet Witch figure so much crap because she had a really unattractive facial sculpt. It's the same body. This Elektra is the same body. She's just a little bit more attractive. So let's go from this Elektra, a terrible Elektra, to Elektra as Daredevil. Oh, this was so cool. This storyline was awesome. So Matt had been framed for murder, or he had, admitted guilt for a murder and went to jail. And so Elektra took up the mantle of Daredevil, took up the side of right, got into this costume and protected Hell's Kitchen, the section of New York City that Daredevil grew up in and that he has protected across time. And they actually got this figure out roughly while this storyline was still happening in the comics. Really, really awesome. Love this Elektra. And it paired directly with this version of DD. So here's Matt right after he got out of prison. He still has his long hair and his beard. I love how they kind of opened his mask up for that. I like the comparisons, the parallels between their two uniforms, like how they go together with the black pants and the similar suit. These two actually, this was the storyline where they took over control of the hand and tried to make it a force for good. They actually got married during this storyline. It was really, really good. Now, they basically retconned the whole thing and kind of killed Daredevil, and then he came back as a priest in Hell's Kitchen, and that's sort of the storyline that we're dealing with now. But this was the story from right before then. And to have these figures in action figure form this close to a story being published, I got to give the Hasbro Marvel Legends team credit for that. That is really, really cool. We've got so I guess I got two of each of those face-off figures. Oh yeah, this is nice. So this is from the early 90s Marvel Superheroes line. So the first Marvel figures that appeared back on shelves since Mattel's Secret Wars. And DD was in, some of the first series. It's basically kind of the same body. It's a very superpowers looking body with the bent arms and everything. Because Toy Biz actually, I think, had gotten some molds from Kenner for that. But, it works. I like it. Still bright colors. I really love those bright colors. Here is a figure from the Spider-Man animated line. And this was kind of the early days of adding articulation instead of just simple 5 or 7 point articulation. This figure, he's got ball shoulders. He's got these unique ball hips. He has no pelvis whatsoever, but he has ball hips. For some reason, I tried to paint the eyes white. I don't know if it maybe sort of looked like that on the cartoon. It was a bad move, and I've never been able to get it cleaned up, so that's what it looks like. Another love interest of Daredevil, of course, was Black Widow. Here is a 5-inch figure. Nice kind of pleather jacket, like some soft goods from her Avengers time. She's got her Wasp Sting. I wonder if she's supposed to have two. She only has one here in this box. The short hair, Natasha Romanoff, kind of the spy era. And this was, this gray suit with the Widow on her chest there. That was sort of the era when she was partners with Daredevil. So I think it works in the box. This is another of that early Hasbro Daredevil that I like so much. Back in the day, these figures only cost like $8. So if you wanted to pick up an extra one or just kind of splurge on an extra one, it wasn't that big a deal to do. I've got some smaller figures in here from the Marvel Universe line. This is, I don't think that's meant to be like a Shadowland Daredevil. Of course, we got a couple more bullseyes here. Not a lot of difference between those two. Different paint apps, a little bit of a different belt and accessories. Who's this? So these, and I think they're the same. Yeah, this is the early Toy Biz Bullseye. So Bullseye was one of the first villains in the Toy Biz line. I've always felt like he had kind of a monkey face. This is a terrible figure, honestly. I mean, I think they tried to cram, this is probably like a Punisher body again, and they just tried to put an overlay on there and sculpt a new head that just totally doesn't work. Not everything Toy Biz did was perfect, just for the record. Yeah, here's the more standard Marvel Universe Daredevil. Really nice. Now, we got a couple more. Let's see. Let's look at this figure first. Typhoid Mary, a figure that was a character who was created by, I believe, during Ann Niacenti's run, along with John Romita Jr. Just a really kind of neat looking figure with kind of the split makeup there, leather jacket, fishnet, ripped up hose. I believe in current continuity, she's actually married to Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, but it's nice to get like some 80s Daredevil villains in the box. Now, Dee had an era where he was injured. Oh, is that rubbed? Oh, man. See, I really do need to get these things out of here. Look, he's got a little bit of black paint rub on his nose. I'm going to have to work on that. But this is the armored Daredevil that came on a retro card back. Like the first of the Spider-Man retro card backs, we got this super cool red chrome armored Daredevil figure. And one of the things that I love about this guy was he actually came with a really nice Matt Murdock head sculpt. Great kind of ruby quartz, almost Cyclopsy looking glasses there. But this is probably the best Marvel Legends Matt Murdock head that we've gotten. And it came with the armored Daredevil, which I clearly need to take better care of. This one, I don't know if this is like supposed to be Shadowland Daredevil or like Dark Reign Daredevil or Marvel Knights Daredevil, but it's like Daredevil in a black costume. And he kind of wore some versions of that in each of those storylines. You can see he comes with the really cool Billy Club accessory that whips around. Pretty nice. But since we're talking about Daredevil Born Again, let's finish with a couple of on-screen versions of Charlie Cox's Daredevil. So this is the Netflix series version in his red suit. I thought they did pretty good with this. I think it makes sense. He's a street fighter, so having him in body armor, almost Kevlar, really works. I think the mask is certainly indicative of the comic look. I mean, you look at that and you recognize that that's a guy in a suit, but you also immediately can tell that's Daredevil. It's not like it's somebody else. It's not like they've completely morphed the character. I would love to see that DD logo on the chest. And actually earlier today, right before I started filming this, they released 3D renders of a new MCU Daredevil. So I'm hoping to see that in 6-inch form when it comes out. But then here is the Hot Toys version of Charlie Cox as Daredevil. So you've got a 12-inch DD in his costume, bloodied, battered, looking like the street fighting vigilante that he is. So a really nice sculpted detail figure to finish up on. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at Daredevil. Hopefully the series is really good. I can't wait for it to come out. But in the meantime, for the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.